Hi, I'm Kelly Forshaw-Smith, Head Medical Trainer for the Finishing Touches Group and Director and Technician of Medicos London. And today we have...
Amy Parasa, business owner of iBrowink Boutique.
Amy was on maternity leave when she first saw an ad advertising for the semi-permanent makeup. She didn't even know what it was back then, but it soon took her interest and she decided to train. She'd been trained for over 4.5 years and she was doing 2 jobs until she decided to take the plunge and just to focus on doing the eyebrows instead. It is one of her biggest services that she offers. She does do other treatments, but this is the biggest one in terms of her clientele. So welcome, Amy.
Hiya, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Are you good?
I'm really good. How are you?
I'm very well as well.
Good.
So your topic today is going to be my love for microblading. So first of all, can you tell me, for people out there, what is microblading?
So microblading is just another form of semi-permanent cosmetic tattooing. It's not done with a tattoo machine. It's done kind of with a blade. It's tiny kind of nano needles that make up a tiny blade. And you just do really kind of superficial incisions, kind of hair stroke incisions, implant the pigment, and it basically replicates natural hair strokes and natural hair. So it's just a really beautiful way to kind of rebuild lost brows or kind of make your brows more defined, but still keeping them really, really natural.
Can anyone have microblading?
It's suitable for most people. With microblading, it's really not ideal for oily skins. So you tend to find kind of the oil production, the sebum production, they just don't retain well. With microblading, you really want, like when they heal, you really want the stroke to stay really kind of crisp and individual. With the oilier skin, they can tend to kind of migrate and blur together, and it ends up kind of looking a bit like a shoddy powder brow. So you've got to kind of pick your clients quite wisely. If they're particularly oily, I would steer them more to kind of machine and ombre powder. Majority of people are fine. I tend to find if it's kind of combination skin, a little bit of a mix. If you're just open and honest with the client, kind of set the expectations, majority of people will hold pretty well. The only other skin that isn't ideal is kind of really, really dry skins, kind of eczema prone, psoriasis, dermatitis, that they're not great because of kind of how much the cells are kind of producing and kind of overworking. But yeah, majority, it's really kind of similar to the machine, you know, kind of the skins that don't hold amazing with the machine. It's similar, they just don't hold as well.
They don't hold in general. Can you do all different types of styles, or is it just hair stroke with microblade?
It's not as versatile as a machine, so it is kind of, you are just blades and you're kind of doing the hair strokes. It is very, very versatile in terms of kind of, there's loads of different strokes you can do. So obviously you can do more curved strokes, straight strokes, S strokes, there's like double strokes. There's so many ways you can adapt it to make it really versatile. But in terms of it is really just strokes. There are different blades where you can kind of have shaders, so you can put like shading through it. So you can get a bit of like a combi, not a combi brow, but like a more of a blading shade. But yeah, it's kind of more, that's kind of the most you can do with it, but you can make it very kind of versatile as you're working with someone.
Yeah, maybe start that. So do the hairs first, and then at a later date, maybe go into learning the shading and all of the combination brows and so on. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's different, like you can do manual shading, so you can still just pick up the blade and kind of do manual shading for lighter shading. There's different ways you can kind of position the strokes as well. You know, you can kind of pack them in much more closely and get a much like denser brow, and you don't really kind of not always a need for shading. Or you can kind of separate the strokes and do shading in between. But I mean, shading you can do it both with the machine and with a kind of like a 3/4 blade, or there's different blades out there. But I guess kind of if you're doing light shading, I would just pick up kind of a manual tool for that.
What blades do you use yourself?
So when I first trained, I was trained in a 9 slanted or 9 angled, I think it was. And then I kind of tested a 14. I stuck with them. You know what it's like when you train, you just kind of stick to what you know. I stuck with them for a while. Then I found the U blade, which is like my baby. I don't like go to any other blades now. So I tend to stick with the 18 U blade. I tend to find it suits most hairstyles. You've got, I have got the 0.15, which are the real nano blades, and they're really perfect for if you're trying to do really intricate work and tiny kind of in between strokes. I've got the bigger blades, which are kind of the 0.25. They're really good for like denser hair if you've got someone with really thick, coarse hair. However, I don't tend to use them because what you have to allow for with microblading is the strokes slightly like spread out as they heal, they slightly soften. I mean, the main thing you want with microblading is your stroke to stay really nice and crisp, but they do spread out to a degree. So I try not to go to a much bigger needle, if I'm honest. Or blade, I try to kind of stick with the 0.18. If I've got someone with really coarse, dense hair, a lot of people would just go to kind of a bigger blade. But what I tend to do is I would stick with my 0.18 and use a darker colour so it kind of shows up. And I just find that when they come back, I don't know, a year later or whenever, the stroke hasn't got too thick. So when you're kind of going back over it and just boosting the colour, it stays really nice and crisp, and you haven't kind of got that old colour on the edges of the new stroke.
How many sessions do you do?
How many sessions? Not nearly always 2. So I do have, if someone's come back and retained really well, it's not, what I might do is I might not go over all the strokes, but it's always a 2-stage process. I do have it like, and kind of let people know in the consultations forms that some skins do need 3 sessions. It's the same like with machine. It's not, I always say it's not rare to need a 3rd session, but it's not common. Yeah. But I always try and let people know, like before they kind of commit, they know what they're signing up to.
And how far apart are the sessions?
I always leave a minimum of 6 weeks, normally between about 6 to 12 weeks. Older skin, I would never go under 6 weeks. My favourite is kind of between 6 to 8 weeks that I would leave. In terms of colour boost, I tend to say to people between 6 to 12 months. Most people get a lot longer out of that, or they get the year, maybe a bit longer. But I just think it kind of sets people's expectations, because otherwise you have got some skins that just don't hold well. If I've got someone who's coming back kind of every 6 months or so, then I would try and kind of steer them probably to another style. But majority of people, I would say, probably they get a good year out of them.
Yeah, I would say again, on the lead up, like towards a year, because you can bet your bottom dollar you'll have a client who'll literally it'll be like 1 day off being a year. And you said that they would last.
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
No. So towards a year.
100%, and that's why like, I always say 6 months to a year. Majority of clients will hear a year. They don't hear the 6 months, they just hear a year. And then I would find most people come back between 9 to a year, like 9 months to a year. But I just think if you've got it written down 6 months, like it sets their expectations straight away. But and then it's a bonus if they hold longer. But you're right, they kind of a day before and they think they haven't got their money's worth.
I know, absolutely. How did you first get your clientele when you started?
When I first trained, I spent about half a year. So I trained in maternity leave, so I had a little bit of time off. I spent about probably four to 6 months just practicing on like latex, like my mates, my mum, like my family. So what I didn't do was just go dive straight in and just start kind of offering cheap model slots. I was really particular. I didn't want to practice on people's skin. So I know to a degree you have to, but I wanted to build up my confidence first. So my first set of brows, it was banging for like a new set. I was quite chuffed with them. Like since then I did a few shoddy ones, but my first set of brows were pretty good. So I kind of built up a little portfolio. I was just lucky that the few I did were nice. And then I just, I'd kind of set up like my website, my Instagram, my Facebook. I'd done it all kind of at once. So when I was ready to go, it was all ready. I didn't really kind of drip feed anyone that I was setting up a new business. So when I did finally set up, it kind of looked kind of professional. Yeah. I had some nice photos. After that, I got quite a lot of interest just straight away from the photos. I did a couple of paid promotions on Facebook, but I mean, I'll probably put in like £3. Do you know what I mean? I didn't know like what Facebook ads were all about. I probably did about 3 maximum, and I did about £3 worth over a day. So it wasn't going to generate loads, but that did bring me in some. But I quickly found that I just didn't need that. And I don't know if you've got like on your Facebook, you've got like the local selling pages.
Yes.
Yeah, and everyone's putting their secondhand crap on there and all their stuff. But I put it on there, and that, when I was starting out, that got so much interest. And I put it on a few local ones. That got me enough people to kind of keep going. And since then, to be honest, it's just like word of mouth. I don't really advertise. I just upload my photos to my kind of social platforms now. But I just find like word of mouth and recommendation is just like massive.
I don't think you can beat word of mouth, can you?
Not at all. Like, especially for a treatment like that, people want like to know that their recommendation is everything. They want to know they trust the person. And I think like if you're doing a good job, if you're spending time trying to get good results, those people are coming back to you.
I've always said that. Like, your clients?
How do I maintain? I'm really like, I don't know if you find it, but this job like takes over. Like, it's not just like a 9 to 5 where you just put it down and kind of leave the clinic. Like, I'm just all day, every day, just like learning, researching, practicing. And I just think if you like, you have to dedicate yourself to it a little bit. And if you do put in the time, you do get results and people come back from that. If you give people like, you know, the treatment they want and a good service, they then recommend you. And you find it just starts off like that. You know, you might do a daughter and then the mum will come and then the auntie will come. And then like the auntie will work at the school and then you start getting this. So if you do a good job. I
did a lady from Nigeria and now literally, I'm no joke, I reckon I do half of Nigeria's eyebrows. They fly over. Well, they did before this, but they were flying over for like a day to have their eyebrows and makeup done. I was like, geez.
And that's like, it just shows that your work's good. Like, but that's right. If you do a good job, people will travel. Like, I've had people from Spain. I've got a lot of the air hostesses. They're used to like traveling, so they travel. But I also think like I spend a lot of time on my clients. Like, I've had clients come here before and just said that they were in and out within 15 minutes. Like, no like pre-draw, no agreeing anything with them. So I try and like involve them in the process. Like, they kind of choose a colour with me. Like, obviously I only put colours on that I know will suit them, and they're kind of involved in the pre-draw. But I do spend time on them, and I like at the end, like I've always got a joke. I don't know if you've watched like Love Actually, like that Mr. Bean episode where like I've always joked because at the end of doing a brow, I just fanny about for about half an hour. I'm just shoving all stuff, like just really like taking my time to do all the little extras, but like they appreciate it. I think they just appreciate, like, it's a service that they're paying for, and I think if you give them that, so I mean, I used to do a set amount of clients a day, but I just felt too rushed. I've actually dropped the amount I do a day.
How many do you do a day?
I do 3 top-ups and colour boosts a day, but I will only do 2 new sets a day now.
How long does it take you to do the microblading?
It takes, I normally put aside about 3 hours for a new set. It doesn't always take 3 hours to do the actual brow, but I just find by the time they've come in and you've numbed and you've done the forms, and then like at the end, like you're just having a chat. So yeah, I'd probably say about 3 hours for a new set. I always say to a client, like, give or take half an hour. So some people will be out the door earlier if they've got good skin and it's just going well. Some people just require like more work and more strokes, got difficult skin. And what I can't stand, like if I'm kind of getting to the end of like the time and I know another client's done and I'm just not finished, like I'm such a perfectionist, I just couldn't have that. So I was like, I'm just going to cut like 1 client a day, and I've just got that time to faff about. And it's a bit of perfectionism, but I can't help myself.
I think that's good. How much do you personally charge for eyebrows?
I charge, oh God, I can't actually remember because of my PA. I charge I think it's $2.95 for my first set and then $95 for my top up.
Okay.
And colour boost, I think about $150.
Okay, cool. So that makes sense because I personally charge £200 first session, and then when they come back the next time I charge $200. So I'll just do it that way. I like to feel the fibre of the fabric. When they come back in, I'm like, sometimes when I used to do it for free, like the retouch, I'll be like, oh, I'd have a day of like, technically, obviously they paid, but in my head, I'm like, there's no money. I can't.
Yeah, what was the point?
Exactly. This is much better.
I get like that even with top ups. You kind of have a busy day and you think, oh, I don't really make a lot. But I think as well, we've got a high profit in this job, and you kind of lose track of that sometimes, don't you? Like,
definitely. I mean, there's not many jobs out there where you can make £280 in for you 3 hours, but £280. And I'm like, gee, that's pretty darn good. And we enjoy
It's good.
it. But basically,
Yeah.
I would say to my kids, they're like, Mummy, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I make eyebrows feel better. I'm a doctor of eyebrows. So they go in, I've got a stethoscope. And so they go into it and they're like, my mummy's a doctor of eyebrows. And I'm like, yeah.
I might use that one.
I
might
like
promote myself. Yeah, I'm going to be
I
a
always
doctor.
put the glove on and then give it a ping. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm definitely a doctor.
Yeah. I might just drop the eyebrows. I might just say I'm a doctor to my kids.
Why not?
He's
Why
a doctor,
not?
yeah.
I used to wear a lab coat as well. Now I just wear scrubs. So I'm like, yeah, awesome.
Yeah. I like flip between uniforms. Sometimes I think, no, I want to be a bit professional and I wear uniform. And then other times I like, no, like, I'm gonna have a chill day. So I kind of flip between if I wear uniform or not.
See, in our clinics at the moment, we have to wear scrubs anyway. But I mean, I've always worn scrubs, but we wear scrubs, and then we're having to wear all the caps.
Yeah.
I work in the Portland Hospital, so obviously they're a little bit more strict. You have to leave the building wearing or coming into the building wearing scrubs, or going out. You have to obviously get changed when you get there, and then put on all of the Crocs and all of this. But I quite like it. It's like wearing your pajamas all day.
Yeah, that's I'm just living them. I've pretty much lived in my pajamas like most of lockdown. I tend to wear black because I'm a bit of a messy worker.
Are you?
Yeah, like I love black anyway, but I just live in black. And then I think if I get a spillage, like, you know what I mean, it doesn't stain. But
not so bad. Has your technique varied over the years?
I hope so. It has. I think at the beginning, I mean, it's like with any machine, any treatment you do, like you can't learn it all like in the first few days. So you have to just learn the basics. But I think for me, like the main thing, I never used to kind of, just little things, I never used to kind of follow hair flow. I would just kind of get a set, wouldn't really like understand their brow and just start stroking away sounds a bit rude. I that's why I get returning custom, because I stroke my clients.
You stroke away.
Yeah, stroking all my clients. I never used to like just kind of take the time. So now I've learned like to really kind of look at someone's hair flow and like brush the brows before they come in to see like where their hair flow sits and kind of adapt your pattern on that and look at kind of the density of their hair. So that's another thing, because that kind of really gives me an idea how I'm going to position each stroke. So with blading, you don't want to be doing the strokes too close. So you kind of have to learn how close you can go without them, or kind of really learn the skin as well. And from that, you can learn how close the strokes can go, whether you want a more dense brow. So I didn't really know that at the beginning. So over time, I think it's just allowed me to create a better brow for that person. And I think you do see like with a lot of, and we've all done it, like with a lot of like microblading, you know, their hair will be going one way and all the strokes will be going the total opposite, and it just looks unnatural. And it's the opposite.
Do you work to a pattern, or do you tailor make it for each of your patients?
I always remember my trainer saying I've only got, because I remember saying, I like that brow, and she trained me and she was like, they're all the same pattern. So I have got like a rough pattern, but I do adapt it depending on the client I've got in front of me. So whether I pack in the strokes or whether they're slightly more kind of vertical or horizontal. So I do adapt it depending on the person I've got in front of me.
Who are your favourite technicians to watch? You know, because I quite often stalk people on Facebook who I like. Who are your favourites?
I've got to be honest, if you asked me that maybe a year ago, I would have just had a list, because I got into that kind of thing, you know, you just start looking at everyone's work and then you think, oh God, they're so good, like mine's shoddy. And you like put yourself down all the time and critical of your work. The last, like, I would say since lockdown, I've kind of gone 360 and my whole mindset has changed. I don't really stalk anyone anymore. I've just got to that point where I just think like, this is what I create. Yeah. That's me, that's what I do. How can I like better it? Because I've sat there before and I've tried to copy like someone's hair stroke brow just on latex, and it comes out completely different. Yeah. And a few times I thought, actually, I love like what I've created. So I don't massively focus on other people's work now, but I do appreciate other people's work. I mean, I guess if I've got for lips, for me, there's I don't know if you know Agnes Permanent. I think that's her name on Instagram. Like her lips, I don't really follow lips because I don't do them, but those for me, like I want them done. So she is up there for lips. Eyeliner, it's got to be Steph Toms for me. I just love her, like pixelated. I love pixels. I've become a bit pixel obsessed. I love Steph's eyeliner. Hair strokes. So I've not just trained, I trained in machine strokes about a year ago with Oksana Martinenko, I think her last name is. So her strokes, I absolutely love her, like realism strokes. And ombres, do you know what I find? Like, I stalk the Russians. If I am going to stalk anyone, it's the Russians. So there's a lady, I can't remember her last name, it's Margarita, I can't remember her name, I can't remember her name. But her ombres are beautiful. But I just find a lot of the Russian technicians, I don't know what it is.
Isn't it? It's amazing.
Oh, it's just the detail
also,
in their work.
I think when you're looking at other people's styles from around the world, I mean, Asians, for example, they've always got really beautiful eyebrows that they're getting, because their skin is a certain type, so that they're acceptable to the hair strokes going in. That's why they sit so beautifully, I think. But no,
100%.
All the different styles from around the world of different people doing it.
Yeah, there's beautiful stuff, and there's so many, like, you know, people like, you know, you would know all the names. There's so many people I could reel off who just do beautiful work here. But you know, I'd love to take a bit of time out and go to Asia and do some that beautiful skin. It's more enjoyable a treatment as well when you've got someone with nice skin. It's just, you enjoy it more. I enjoy it more.
Do you tell people to pluck their eyebrows or shape them before they come in?
No, I don't. I used to, because I had a few like wild brows coming through, but no, I don't. I quite like to see that, like, where their natural brow is. And what you find is a lot of the time they're plucking areas that aren't kind of, you want that hair within the brow.
Yeah.
The typical brow for me is that tadpole brow.
Yeah.
And they kind of pluck under, and I want all that hair. Like, you want the density at the bottom of the brow. So yeah, no, I try and just tell them to kind of leave them, and then on the day I will tidy them up with a razor. So I try not to pluck on the day, because it kind of opens up the hair follicle and the pigment goes in. So I try and just kind of raise them off on the day, tidy them up, and then obviously just tell them to maintain it.
Fantastic. Because I mean, I do both. I learned how to do microblading because I started the other way around. So you started with microblading, I started with machine. And I think you get used to doing it, obviously, to a certain way. And then when they said, oh, this microblading, I thought, you know what, I want to learn it because everybody knows of the name microblading.
Yeah.
So even if they're having semi-permanent machine brows, they still call it microblading.
Yes.
And I always say to my clients, it's a little bit like, so like a Hoover, for example, that's actually a make. It's actually a vacuum cleaner.
Yeah.
Everyone calls it Hoover. It's the same kind of principle with it.
Yeah.
So I do advertise my own work as digital microblading, or I put microblading in there so it's found with the hashtags. So with doing the machine that you said you've done now, do you still have a favorite? Is microblading still your favorite?
I trained in the hair strokes with machine about a year ago, but I have just been too busy, which is no excuse, but I just haven't had time to practice. So I've done latex work, which is on like my page, and I've only just uploaded my first hair stroke brow.
Okay.
So I haven't given hair strokes with the machine long enough to love it yet.
Yeah.
It's quite like, it's the same as micro, it's a real skill and you've just got to master it. So I haven't given that enough time yet, but that's kind of my aim for this year, to kind of veer to and kind of practice on that. With the microblading, is like my love. It's just, I'm so confident with it and I just know what I'm doing, but I do love ombres as well. It's a tricky one. I would probably say 50-50 for me now, because it's nice to break it up.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's got to be 50-50.
I recommend someone who's looking into it to possibly look at training in both, really.
Yeah, I would train in both, because I think, for, like you said, a lot of people just come in asking for microblading and they just sometimes mean hair strokes.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the time, if you just said to someone, I do machine strokes, they would have that like, I think it's perfect for people with oily skins. They've got a much better chance at them holding with the machine. So for those people, it's perfect. If you've got someone with needing a lot of shading and things, or combination brow, it's perfect. Yeah, so I would definitely say train in both. There's a market for both. I think with microblading, you can be creative with both, but you can really be intricate with microblading, and that's what I love about it. You can kind of get strokes so close together. but I do think in terms of kind of skin integrity, like different skin types and things, like it's definitely worthwhile training in both.
And if you could give 3 tips to somebody who is thinking of doing microblading or does microblading already, what would they be?
Oh, to someone who does microblading already, I would say don't keep devaluing your service by continual offers and promotions. I think spend time. I think a genuine offer is amazing, like grab it or go for it to promote your business. But you find that some people are continually doing them. I think put your time into getting really good, and your customers will return. And know your worth. Like once you are good at your job, people will come back. I think for me, spend time like learning. As I said earlier, about learning about skin types and learning about the hair flow and learning about different pigment, like, inorganics and organics. For a long time, say someone didn't come back was overdue their colour boost, and there was that warmth to them.
Yeah.
And for ages, you kind of beat yourself up and you think, why have I done that? And actually, you kind of learn that, inorganics and iron oxides do that if they're overdue a colour boost. So a lot of the time you're beating yourself up and being really critical of your work. And actually, it's just once you get a bit of knowledge, and then that's a confidence builder in itself. I always ask people for a photo of their brows with makeup.
Yeah.
So I tend not to do consultations in person now unless the person wants to. But I would always ask for a picture of someone with and without makeup. And I just think you can kind of set the expectations, and there's no nasty surprises. Because, we've all had it, where someone's coming with a brow like drawn on too long, or, you know what I mean? And it's kind of, you can set that before you even start, like, I wouldn't do I wouldn't be doing your brow that length, or.
Yeah. Good idea.
So I always say, pardon?
That's a good tip.
Yes. I'm just trying to think of some other tips. For anyone like new in the industry, I would try and say, I went to an academy where I didn't have case studies. And I loved that at the time. It suited me, like, obviously kind of I passed on the study that the study that kind of during the training, but ongoing case studies, I would say, is probably looking back are really important. Although it's kind of more long-winded and you might spend months and be getting frustrated that you're not kind of just able to go out and start. I just think like it's any feedback is like good learning. And also find someone whose style you like. Yeah. So I just find like I was a bit clueless, to be honest. Like I'd worked in social services. I just didn't know. I didn't have like these. I don't know if the platforms weren't there, or I just wasn't aware of them. But there wasn't like Instagram like I know it now, or like the PMU circle. I didn't know all these amazing artists. So I think just find someone whose style you love. I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
I think that's been brilliant. I think that's tips. I'm liking that. Obviously you're young with the social media and bits. Instagram, Facebook, any other ones out there that you think would be good to advertise on?
I personally don't use any others. I just have. I've got a website which you do get people through there, but I do find. I get bookings through Instagram and Facebook, but I do find word of mouth for me. Like I don't advertise on any other platforms. Yeah. The other thing for like newbies coming into it is what I'd say is what I probably didn't do was I didn't make enough notes. So when I had someone, I don't know, at the beginning, like I find a lot of people with microblading work far too deep. Like it's got a bit of a name for itself now. There's been so many photos you've seen where people have just almost like they're kind of slicing someone. It just doesn't need to be like that. It should be like a machine. It should be really superficial. But I didn't make enough notes. So if I did go too heavy on someone, I would have just thought, oh God, I've gone too heavy. What in theory, now looking back, I should have made a note and said, look, client's right brow, top stroke, I went too deep. And when they come back 6 weeks later, I could see how it had healed. Yeah. And then it shows you like what doing a deep stroke, like how it heals. Or just there was a period where I must have been working slightly lighter on the client's left side. So I had a few clients where this was at the start where they would be slightly lighter on one side. But for ages, because I wasn't writing it down or kind of putting the two and two together, as soon as I started logging a few, I was like, my pressure's off. So
do you sit on one side or do you move around?
No, I like rolling around, yeah.
She likes rolling around and stroking
them, yeah. But no, I really admire, because when I watch like blading, some people stand above them and work on the left brow, kind of leaning over and going, I don't know, from the bottom of the brow upwards. I'd love to do that because it would just give more movement in my hand, but I just can't do it.
Yeah.
So I do find my left side is much more restricted, and it's awkward, but it's just the way.
I think you just got to get used to it, whether maybe you're moving your client that little bit more over to one side, because I think a lot of people forget that the client does move too. And you're trying to get to this awkward position, just the client, and then it just gives you your wrist a better action of doing. But like you said, if you find out that you're doing one side stronger or one side lighter, then at least once you recognize it, then you can adapt to it.
Yeah, exactly. And I always remember my trainer for ombre, he said, like, lean on them, if you need to lean on them, like they're. And I do now, like I just like get on top of them. Like, I mean, ladies with big boobs are great because you've got a little rest. Like, they don't mind, but as long as you're, you know what I mean? If you're getting,
I think it actually relaxes a client when you rest on them. It comforts them to a certain degree, because they're like, oh, they're there. I always say to trainees when they come towards them and they're like holding it up here, I'm like, hold the area, press it down, and gently stretch, because it makes someone feel more secure rather than something wading towards them.
Yeah, exactly. And your client wants, you want to look confident in front of them and not like, oh, the worst is when they're falling asleep and their head keeps going and you're trying to keep them relaxed, but you're like, just come back to the middle.
I could do with a snooze.
Oh, I would love to do yours. Have a little snooze.
Love that. Done. As soon as we get out this lockdown business, I'll be there.
I know. We're pretty close, actually, aren't we?
We're not too far at all.
Yeah.
Do you know what, Amy? This has been absolutely brilliant, and I'm sure it's helped a lot of people who are either thinking of coming into the industry or who are already in it, and they're like, "Oh, I like that little tip that you've just given there." So thank you so much for taking.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome, and hopefully I'll get to speak to you again sometime.
We will.
Lovely. Thanks so much, Amy.
All right. Take care.
Cheers. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.